Let me tell you about a ship that never made it where it was going, and a crew that came home anyway. In 1914, Ernest Shackleton set sail for Antarctica with a crew of 27 men aboard a ship called the Endurance. The plan was to be the first to cross the continent on foot. They never got the chance. 10 months in, pack ice crushed the ship's hull and swallowed it whole, stranding the entire crew on drifting ice, 1,000 miles from anyone who knew they existed. Here's the part that should be impossible. Every single one of those 27 men made it home alive. 2 years of frostbite, starvation, 20-foot swells crossed in an open lifeboat, and a final trek over mountains no one had ever mapped, and Shackleton didn't lose a single man. He didn't do it with luck. He did it by refusing to let his crew's minds collapse before their bodies did. Every single day on that ice, he gave the men a job, a routine, a reason to keep functioning, because he understood something the Stoics had written about 18 centuries earlier. The body can survive almost anything the mind is still willing to fight for. That's what this video is about. Not motivation you feel for an afternoon. A mind you build, brick by brick, until almost nothing external can knock it down. We're going through 12 principles. Ancient. Tested by people who had every reason to break and didn't. Let's build something. Principle 1. The circle you actually own. Start here, because everything else depends on it. There are exactly 2 categories of things in your life. What you control and what you don't. Your effort, your attention, your honesty, your response to what happens, yours. The weather, other people's opinions, the market, your genetics, whether the plane is delayed, never yours, no matter how much energy you throw at them. Most people spend 80% of their mental energy renovating a house they don't own. In March 2020, when markets dropped faster than almost any point in history, 2 different kinds of investors existed. One group spent the crash refreshing their portfolios every 4 minutes, making panicked trades, losing sleep over numbers they had zero ability to move. The other group, and interviews with several of them after the fact confirm this, spent the same weeks doing something almost boring, reviewing their actual holdings, checking their actual risk exposure, and otherwise going back to work. Same crash. Wildly different outcomes 18 months later, and it had nothing to do with who was smarter. Try this today. Draw 2 circles, one small inside, one large. Inside the small one, write only what you can actually direct, your effort, your words, your habits, your focus. Outside it, everything else. Then notice, honestly, where your worry lived yesterday. For most people, it's almost entirely in the outer ring. Principle 2. The wall is the door. Here's something almost nobody's brain is wired to accept. The obstacle in front of you isn't blocking the path. It is the path. Louis Zamperini was an Olympic runner whose plane went down over the Pacific during World War II. He survived 47 days adrift on a raft, then 2.5 years in Japanese POW camps, enduring treatment that broke stronger men than him. By any measure, his life should have ended in bitterness. Instead, the discipline he built surviving that raft, rationing, mental focus, refusing to let his mind go first even when his body was failing, became the exact same discipline that let him rebuild an entire life afterward, one most people would call remarkable by any standard. The obstacle didn't interrupt his story. It became the training ground for the rest of it. Next time something blocks you, ask 3 questions instead of 1 complaint. What is this forcing me to get better at? What can I see from here that I couldn't see before I hit this wall? Who am I becoming by working through it instead of around it? Principle 3. Love the material you were given. Most philosophies tell you to accept hardship. The Stoics went further. They said find a way to actually want the life you got, difficulties included, because the difficulties are the raw material, not an interruption to it. Think about a blacksmith. Nobody hands him soft metal and asks for a blade. The whole reason a sword can hold an edge is that it was hammered and heated until it stopped being what it started as. Malala Yousafzai was shot for insisting girls deserved an education. She didn't get to choose that. What she chose was what came after, turning the exact event meant to silence her into the platform that made her voice reach further than it ever could have otherwise. She has said, in more than one interview, that she doesn't wish the attack away, Because the person it made her is someone she'd rather be than the version of herself who never faced it. Try this for the next 30 days. Each morning, write down one hard thing from the day before, then write 3 honest ways it sharpened you. It'll feel forced for the first week. By day 30, it stops being an exercise and starts being how you naturally see difficulty. Principle 4. Want the right things. Most suffering doesn't come from what you lack. It comes from what you've convinced yourself you need. The Stoics split everything you might want into 2 piles. Preferred things, money, reputation, comfort, other people's approval, fine to enjoy, fine to work toward, but never things your actual peace should be chained to. And true goods, courage, honesty, discipline, the quality of your effort, things nobody can repossess, no matter what happens externally. J.K. Rowling was turned down by 12 publishers before one said yes to the book that would go on to sell over 500 million copies. If her sense of worth had been fused to any single one of those 12 rejections, there'd have been no reason to send a 13th letter. What kept her going wasn't confidence the book would sell. It was that the writing itself, the discipline of finishing it, was something no rejection letter could take from her. Write your top 10 goals right now. For each one, ask, if I never get the external result, was the discipline and growth of chasing it still worth having? If yes, that goal is built on solid ground. If the entire value collapses without the outcome, you've found a dependency worth loosening. Principle 5. Let the clock sharpen you, not scare you. Roman generals, at the height of their victory parade, had a servant riding beside them, whispering one phrase in their ear the entire time. Remember, you will die. Not to ruin the moment, to keep it in proportion. Admiral William McRaven, describing his years commanding Navy SEAL missions, has talked about how operators are trained to plan not around what should happen, but around the very real chance that today might be the day that goes wrong, because a person who's already made peace with the stakes moves calmer under real pressure than one who's never let the thought in. You don't need a battlefield to use this. Sit for 2 minutes and picture yourself decades from now, looking back honestly. What will you wish you'd said, tried, or let go of sooner? Write the answers without editing them. They're your actual values, finally talking without the noise. Principle 6. Rehearse the bad day before it arrives. Before Marcus Aurelius left his room each morning, he mentally walked through the difficult people and setbacks he'd likely meet that day. Not to spiral, but to arrive already unsurprised. Firefighters run live burn drills for exactly this reason. Nobody wants a real fire, but every rep in a controlled one means the real one doesn't get to catch them flat-footed. The mind works the same way. Rehearsed difficulty lands softer than ambushed difficulty. Try a version of this tonight. Name one thing likely to go wrong tomorrow. Not to worry about it, to answer calmly, in advance, if that happens, here's exactly what I'll do. That single sentence, prepared ahead of time, is often the entire difference between panic and a shrug. Principle 7. Build towards something bigger than your own comfort. There's a reason people in some of the most demanding, least glamorous jobs, nurses, teachers, search and rescue volunteers, often report more resilience than people in far easier ones. Purpose that reaches past your own life tends to outlast motivation that starts and ends with your own comfort. Helen Keller, deaf and blind from early childhood, could easily have built a life entirely inward-facing. Instead, she spent decades campaigning for people with disabilities she'd never personally meet. That outward-facing purpose is part of what carried her through discouragement that would have flattened a purely self-directed ambition. Ask yourself honestly, if you fully became the person you're capable of becoming, who else benefits, and how? Sit with the answer. It tends to make the daily discipline feel less like a chore and more like a debt worth paying. Principle 8. 2 bookends for every day. The Stoics didn't just think about their philosophy, they scheduled it. Mornings, they oriented themselves before the world got a vote. Evenings, they reviewed honestly before sleep. A simple version. 5 minutes of actual silence before you touch a screen. Then one sentence. What would make today genuinely count, not just busy? At night, 3 honest questions. What did I do poorly today that I can fix tomorrow? What did I do well that's worth repeating? And where could I have shown up better for someone else? Do this for 7 days and tell yourself the truth about whether anything shifted. Most people who actually try it are surprised how much it does. Principle 9. Every small choice is a brick. Nobody builds inner strength in one dramatic moment. It's built in 1,000 invisible ones nobody's watching. The alarm you don't snooze, the reply you don't send while angry, the hard task you do before the easy distraction. None of these moments feel significant on their own, but they compound. Eventually, you find yourself standing in front of something genuinely difficult and realizing, almost to your own surprise, that you don't crack the way you expected to, not because nothing touched you, but because the foundation underneath you had already been laid, one unnoticed brick at a time. Ask yourself right now, what's the thing that most reliably knocks you off? Balance, criticism, comparison, rejection, boredom? Name it specifically. Then pick one brick you can lay against it tomorrow. Principle 10. You weren't meant to do this alone. There's a common misreading of this philosophy that says strength means needing nobody. The Stoics never taught that. They wrote at length about the value of real friendship, people who tell you the truth, not just what's comfortable. The longest-running study of adult life ever conducted found, after tracking people for over 80 years, that the single strongest predictor of a genuinely well-lived life wasn't wealth or achievement. It was the depth of a person's close relationships. Look honestly at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Which of them push you toward who you actually want to be? Which of them quietly pull you the other way? Then find one person, real and specific, further along than you in something that matters, and let yourself learn from them on purpose. Principle 11. The actual goal. The word the Greeks used wasn't happiness in the way we throw the word around now. It was closer to flourishing, a life lived fully according to your values, regardless of your circumstances. That's available to a person with nothing and a person with everything, because it was never about what you have. It's about who you're choosing to become with what you've got. Principle 12. This doesn't finish. Last thing. This was never a checklist to complete. It's a direction you keep walking in, imperfectly, for the rest of your life. You'll fail at some of this tomorrow. That's expected. What matters is that you turn back toward it the next day anyway. Lay enough of these bricks, and you don't end up with a stronger mood. You end up with a citadel, and nothing life throws at it gets to decide what happens inside the walls. Pick one principle from today. Just one. Practice it for the next 30 days before you move to the next. You are not a finished version of yourself. You're a structure still being built. And the person laying the bricks has always been you.